Hello and welcome to Foxumentary. My name is Fox and today I'll be reviewing Final Destination Bloodlines. The synopsis for this movie is: plagued by a reoccurring violent nightmare, a college student returns home to find the one person who can break the cycle and save her family from the horrific fate that inevitably awaits them. Starring Caitlin Santawana as the main characters, mainly because they traumatized me as a child because I had unfiltered access to the internet and people like to post scary stuff and I was too curious, and so maybe it comes from a little bit of like trauma bonding. But anyway, I will start off by saying if you're intending on seeing it, which I highly recommend, I would maybe sparsely watch this kind of thing, or maybe we'll put in a little sound note or something. There is a spoiler. Final Destination movies, soft spot in my heart. I just love them. They're just so crazy and gory. I think that also they're thought-provoking in the sense of like how you perceive death. And I liked how the first movie did that. So I feel like it's always fun to kind of come through those movies and hyper-analyze it from the standpoint of being a survivor and going through that. Or that's what I like. I think this is a very good contender for one of my top favorite Final Destination. It has probably one of the better storylines. I think it's so subversive from what we have seen so far throughout the series. And I think if you watch it in a long stretch from the first movie through the fifth to this newest sixth one, it is such a good jumping off point from the 2011 Final Destination movie, because I feel like that was a return to form almost at the end of the series. So I'm glad that it was given new life with this movie and depth. I think a lot of components of this newest movie had a lot of improvements to some of the components that made up the other: camera work, CGI, visual storytelling, and sets. But I want to make note of one thing that I was a little bit thrown off by. I feel like at the beginning of the movie, it's one quality, and then from that into the rest of the movie, it's a different quality. And that threw me off. Now, the beginning part is so short. I mean, it feels like it's a heavy scene. But as you're going through the rest of the movie, going in like completely blind, I highly recommend it, because there are just moments that happen that I was genuinely thrown off. I think some of them do get a little bit hard to justify, like, and suspend your disbelief. But I still think, like, in the realm of schlockiness and a lot of logical leaps that Final Destination does, this is definitely, like, in there. But I think that it's still, in a lot of the other movies, it was, character has a premonition. Character doesn't know what premonition means. We see build up and then bloody, gory death. And then to some extent, they're like super avant-garde again with the logical leaps. But I feel like the way that it was executed in this movie was just significantly better. I think they got away from like the premonition-y parts of it, because I think at a certain point that cliche got very, very stale. And that's what Final Destination 5 did really well too, and made it less like camp. And there was one line in this movie that I really liked when the main character was like, I just knew how it was gonna happen because it's like math. And typically throughout the series, at least how I watched it, because I did a rewatch recently, it kind of just felt like an evil entity, an evil god. And just so happened to get premonitions. But by saying that it's math, it just makes me think of like, that's more of an inevitability. I don't know. I thought that was very powerful, and I think that's a really cool thing to take away and go into the, like, there are going to be more movies. But like kind of going back to like visual storytelling, I think some of the camera work was stunning. It was really cool. There was one really cool scene in the very beginning where the camera like twists, and it wasn't fully necessary, I don't think, but it was like discombobulating during a very chaotic part. And I thought that that was really cool. As I mentioned earlier, the CGI was a little bit weird at times. I mean, sometimes it was a little bit computery. Like, I feel like a lot of the movies tout themselves for being very practical with how they did their effects. And I'm sure they had some practical, but it seemed like they used a lot more computer CGI and stuff like that. Definitely a lot of CGI. But I don't think that necessarily takes away from the kills, like it does in Final Destination 4, the 3D one. That one, while they had like They apparently had a bunch of practical stuff, but they added CGI, and I am convinced the 3D messed it up. That's a whole conspiracy theory. I think that was kind of the weaker part of the movie, but I think overall, the way that the kills are done are like, they drag out too. So that the visual of people dying and how it's done is almost excruciating. It is so, I wouldn't even say it's mean necessarily. I mean, it is, but like, I just think it's gruesome. And like, I feel like this is the penultimate of where Final Destination wanted to go with, in terms of like, I think what helps along with that, like it makes it more impactful, is the acting by every character and like the reactions. I think some of the reactions to these deaths feel so like real. Like there are some people, and even there was like one extra who, there was one scene where something happens and one of the extras screamed and I genuinely believed it. Every single one of those deaths were dread inducing. And I don't think I felt that way with a lot of the other Final Destination movies. I think it you get a little bit numb. You can kind of like see certain deaths and be like, ooh, ouch. Definitely. But I think these ones were like mortifying to me personally, because again, they linger. And this helps because you have some like likable characters, or characters that we already know a little bit more, and there's some story behind it. I will say one of my my favorite character, and I know I have a feeling that he's gonna get really popular because kind of gives off Tumblr sexy man vibes. It's Richard Harmon, who plays Eric. He was such a good addition because his comedic timing with the role, some of his banter with some of the characters, I think he was a really good addition. He was probably my favorite character. I think my least favorite character is honestly, I'm not the biggest fan of the main character. I think she was good. I think she acted it very well. I just think that her character in of itself was very sparse. Same with her brother, but I didn't hate them. And I keep coming back to this because in my head, or when I talk about Final Destination, at least right now, because I watched the movies and then I went and watched all the kill counts by Dead Meat. I loved it. I love his videos. I really liked that he did, like, that he kind of follows up on background, like the behind the scenes stuff. And every single kill count for the Final Destination, he said how much he hated the character. And that like little worm has nestled itself right in the back of my head. But I don't think I really hated any characters from Final Destination, with the exception of like some of the really creepy ones, and like there are some genuinely bad people. I didn't like those, but I feel like I can empathize with the characters because like at the end of the day, no one deserves to die, and no one deserves to die the way that they did in the movie, whether in the premonition or otherwise. But I can genuinely say I don't think there were any like creepy characters. I think that really helped too, like not having any like creepers, because I feel like they got really used to doing that throughout the movies for no reason. Overall, story was really good. Visuals were iffy, but worth it if you stick through them. Performances were probably the best in the series. The script, the most well balanced in the series, in my opinion. No, nothing is compared to the first. I think the first one is so special in of itself that I don't think anything can really top it, but this is a pretty close second. My conclusion is I will give it, out of 10, a 7.8. Now, I'm not going to fully round it up to 8 because there are some holdbacks. Mainly, like, the quality in the very beginning brought it down, and then there were some really weird scripted moments that just didn't make sense, but that's the only real reason that I didn't give it a full 8. So I recommend seeing it in theaters, honestly. I think I'll always recommend it because I think having a movie theater experience is just infinitely better if you have a good theater. But I recommend if you watch it, you need to watch all the movies for it to make sense. Also, I want to add, there is no cut. I also want to add, there is no end credit scene, so you don't have to worry about that. Oh my god, I almost forgot to mention Tony Todd. I started crying. He was such a pillar of horror. Just such a good actor. I loved him. I've loved him in Candyman and other things I've seen him in. He was always a staple in the Final Destination movies. His voice is iconic. It was so sad to hear that he died. He only died. He was 69 years old, which in the grand scheme of things isn't super young, but that is strange that he died at that age. I don't know. I feel like 60 is pretty still young. There's an average life expectancy of 80-something years. Not only was his performance just really moving in the sense that it was a farewell, I think in the movie he knew he was on his way out. He looked very sickly, but he did a wonderful job, and it was very nice to see him and have his character actually have some closure. They finally named him, and they gave more of an explanation as to why he was always there or knew so much. And I think that was really, really cool. And then they had a loving memory of him at the end. And I think by the end of it, he's passed, but he is immortalized in the movies that his talent is shown in those. And I think at the very least, you should see the movie to support Tony. Anyway, with that somber ending, thank you for watching. Comment down below a near-death experience that you've had. I'd like to hear. Also, feel free to leave movie suggestions down below in the comments. Like and subscribe. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this. I really appreciate it. I also post shorts and I'm trying to get TikToks up there of smaller reviews. I did a trailer review of Superman and Ironheart and Peacemaker. Feel free to check those out. But yeah, thank you. Bye.